everyone. Welcome back. This is Dr. Aditya Siddhi Chakravarti from Doc Talks. Today we will be dealing with non-ST elevation myocardial infarction. This is the this is the second lecture on myocardial infarction. We will be dealing about NSTEMI. As we all know, what happens in what is the spectrum of acute coronary syndrome? So acute coronary syndrome, the spectrum involves three groups. First one will be the ST elevation MI and the non-ST elevation ACS. This non-ST elevation ACS has got two groups. One is the NSTEMI, the other one is the unstable angina. So, any patient who is having an ST uptake in ECG, this ST uptake in ECG, this forms the ST elevation myocardial infarction. If there is no ST elevation, if the patient is having ST depression or T wave inversion, then it comes under non-ST elevation ACS. This non-ST elevation ACS, if the patient is having a positive biomarkers, that is, if they have any evidence of infarction, then you have to call it as non-ST elevation myocardial infarction. If the biomarkers are negative, then you have to call it as unstable angina. What are the biomarkers? They are basically the CKMB and the troponins. Troponin T or the troponin I. This is the positive biomarker. So, any patient with ECG evidence of ST uptake, class with them as STEMI. Any patient with no ST uptake but having ST depression or T wave inversion, along with that, if the patient is having a positive marker, then you have to think it as unSTEMI. If the patient is having negative markers, then you have to think it in terms of unstable angina. So, what basically happens in the coronary vasculature? So, just imagine if this is the myocardial blood vessel. In the myocardial blood vessel, there will be a high lipid core rich block. This is all fat. This is all more of fatty layer, and this is a thin fibrous cap. This is a high lipid layer, high lipid rich core. Any of this this is what you call as a high risk lesion. This fibrous cap will go for either erosion or rupture. Disruption is more common. It is the most common cause for both and the NSTEMI as well as ST elevation MI. This disruption, when there is some sort of rupture in the core, because if there is rupture, then there will be aggregation of platelets. This platelet aggregation, if it occludes a majority of the portion of the blood vessel, this will form as NSTEMI or an unstable angina. Just the platelets alone. If it completely occludes the blood vessel along with a lot of fibrin strands between the platelets, then you have developed what is called as an ST elevation myocardial infarction. Platelets plus fibrin. So what is the importance of knowing this fact? This is very important because we know in ST elevation we always go for thrombolysis. Thrombolysis means lysis of the fibrin. But in a non-ST elevation myocardial infarction, we do not go for thrombolysis. That is because of this basic reason. And STEMI lesion has got a lot of fibrin, but an NSTEMI is predominantly based on a lot of platelets. That is the basic difference. This is the most common risk factor. The other causes for coronary occlusion include, it can be because of coronary vasoconstriction, it can be because of gradual intraluminal narrowing, it can be because of increase in myocardial oxygen demand when there is fever, tachycardia, thyrotoxicosis. In all these conditions, the oxygen demand will be more. There will be demand-supply mismatch. This is what happens. So, in STEMI, angiographically, what are the vessels occluded in an NSTEMI patient? Basically, 35% of NSTEMI patients have got a triple vessel disease. Triple vessel means the left circumflex is occluded, left antidescending is occluded and the right coronary artery occluded. It is the 35% of the patient it is seen. In 20% it is double vessel disease. In another 20% it is a single vessel disease. In a 15% of the patient can have LMCA occlusion. In 10% of the patient the cause can be known, cause is unknown. 10% LMCA occlusion and 15% the cause is unknown. You have to say this is the incidence of NSTEMI. In unknown cause, it is because of not the epicardial coronary artery. It can be microvascular obstruction in the small myocardial arteries. There the occlusion will be present. So this is the angiographic evidence. So how do they present? So the patient presents with angina, chest pain. What is the unique feature of this chest pain? The patient with the coronary artery disease can always have chest pain, but this NSTEMI chest pain will be unique. Unique how there will be increased severity of the chest pain. The duration of chest pain will be increased, and the frequency of chest pain will also be increased. It will become more regular in a day. Once or twice you may have a chest pain. Here the patient will have 3 to 4 times the chest pain can be there, and the duration of chest pain can be increased. That is the first point. Secondly, it will be a resting chest pain more than 10 minutes duration. Resting angina more than 10 minutes duration. Thirdly, the patient can have a crescendo pattern of everything goes on increasing over a period of time, that will be present. The other finding towards a typical chest pain will be the patient will be having profuse sweating, the patient will have peripheral coolness of the body. These things will be present. And also exertional worsening of the chest pain. That is also classical of an ACS patient. And the pain will be substernal, it will be the chest pain. This will radiate to the left shoulder, to the right shoulder, to the face, anywhere to the neck, it can radiate. What are called as the anginal equivalents? This is important to know because in a patient, say an elderly patient, a diabetic patient, a CKD patient, they won't present the unique, the classical chest pain features. They will have a different presentation like breathlessness, nausea, abdominal pain, vomiting, such atypical presentations. You have to think in terms of MI in such patients. Such patients, MI don't present classically, they can present atypically. These atypical clinical features are called as the anginal equivalents. They are not chest pain, but they are equal to chest pain. The other signs there can be S3, there can be pulmonary Krebs, pulmonary edema can be present, pulmonary Krebs can be present. These are the other findings. There will be hypotension, there is a severe NSTEMI occlusion. These are the other signs that can be present. So, what does ECG show? Okay, the patient is presenting chest pain, a typical chest pain. First, we start with an ECG. ECG can show two findings. It can be an ST depression or it can be a T wave inversion. T wave inversion should be more than 0.3 millivolts. That is only significant. That is only deep T inversion is only significant. A nuanced deep T inversion is significant. A nuanced ST depression is also significant. Then you can localize the ST depression based on the areas where it is involved. But though it is very poor localization than compared to the ST uptake. Then you do the markers. Markers are classically the troponin I, trop T, it is the most commonly preferred one, and trop I, it is preferred in CKD patients. Then you do what is called as a CKMB, creatine kinase of the this is creatine kinase value. It is less specific than the troponins, but can also be used as a marker. The important thing with this CKMB is that when you measure consequently, from the onset of chest pain to about 12 to 24 hours later, there should be a peaking of the marker value. Then it will come down later. So the patient with the chest pain, ECG showing ST depression or T wave inversion with the marker positive, you have to classify them as NSTEMI. Okay, what would you do if the patient initially had chest pain, the chest pain is settled and the ECG is normal and the markers are normal, but the patient has a classical history of chest pain? What do you do then? You have to subject the patient to stress testing or a CCTA. So there is a transfemoral coronary angiography. This is the stress testing means it can be either pharmacological stress or a physical stress. Stress, you have to either run in a treadmill, you have to take a resting ECG, and you should run in a treadmill, and you take sequential ECG. If there is showing any significant ST depression or TVM inversion or ST uptake, then you have to classify them as high risk patients. Then you have to proceed with an intervention, PCA, and go for stenting. So, who are high risk patients? We classify high risk patient based on two scoring. The first score will be the TB scoring, thrombolysis in MI. It includes 7 risk factors. What are the 7 risk factors? Age, more than 65 years of age. The patient having more than at least 3 cardiovascular risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, smoking. The classical risk factors, more than 3 should be present. The patient should be under aspirin treatment for the past 1 week. The patient should have more than 1 episode of angina in the particular day. The patient should have the other risk factors like the patient should have diabetes mellitus is not under, comes under this. The other high risk findings include diabetes mellitus, CKD, increased brain derived natriuretic peptide levels. These are findings or increase in urea creatinine. This patient is what you consider as high risk patient, and they require special treatment. If a high risk patient directly comes to a casualty, it is better to go directly to intervention management than the conservative management. So how do you manage? How do you manage medically? The patient should be advised admission in any CCU. The patient should go for continuous ECG monitoring, look for any progressive ST-TVA changes, or look for any development of arrhythmias. The patient should be ambulated after 24 hours if the chest pain settles or if the patient clinically improves. Then what are the initial management you have to go for? What are the anti-ischemic managements? Anti-ischemic management, you have to go for nitrates. What is the nitrate? What is the nitrate preferred? Nitroglycerin should be given. How should it be given? It should be given sublingually or by an oral spray in dose of 0.3 milligram, 5 minutes apart, 3 doses. Till the patient chest pain recovers. If you give 3 doses of nitroglycerin and the patient chest pain subsides but not completely subsides, there's some recurrent pain, then you can consider IV nitroglycerin, a dose of 5 microgram per minute, and it can be increased every 10 minutes to maximum dose of about 100 to 200 micrograms per minute. So what are the complications of nitroglycerin? Nitroglycerin can cause hypotension. It is difficult to be used in the case of right ventricular myocardial infarction and inferior MI with a pure RVMI. In that case, it should be used with caution. If a patient is using sildenafil or tadalafil, the phosphatase inhibitor, then it should not be given. In a patient with severe aortic stenosis, again, it should not be given. The second group of drugs are after nitrates is the beta blockers. Beta blockers, metoprolol can be given at an oral dose of 25 to 50 milligram Q6 thoroughly. What does beta blocker do? Beta blocker reduces the heart rate, reduces the myocardial oxygen demand, reduces the risk of recurrent arrhythmias. It also can reduce the infarct size. Beta blockers is such a useful drug, but it cannot be used if the patient is having a second degree or third degree heart block, with the PR interval is more than 0.25 more than 5 small blocks or 4 small blocks. If the patient is having a severe COPD, then you cannot give the patient with beta blocker, or if the patient is having acute heart failure with hypotension, LV dysfunction, pulmonary edema, in that patient you cannot go for beta blockers. So if the patient is having nitroglycerin and beta blocker, both of them are not responsive, then you can try a CCB. CCBs can be given. If the patient is still having persistent pain despite all these drugs, then you can consider morphine. Morphine given at a dose of 2 mg IV. We usually go for low dose of morphine because morphine can cause respiratory depression, morphine can cause hypotension, morphine can cause CNS depression. All these adverse effects are seen with morphine. So but it is a very good painkiller in an acute stages. But still, we give it with caution. Yes, any hypotensive prevalent drugs should be used in caution in a patient with ACS. Then you have to go, then you can go for statins. Atorvastatin should be given at a dose of 80 milligram, or it can be combined with ezetimibe. 10 milligram. The target LDL should be less than 7, LDLC should be less than 70, or it should be less than 50% from the baseline. Reducing this has got a lot of pleiotropic action, and it is very beneficial and reduces the chances of procedural MI when given before procedures. So what are the antiplatelets we give? The basic antiplatelets include the aspirin. It should be given indefinitely in all the patients with NSTEMI. Aspirin loading dose should be 305 milligram, and the maintenance dose will be 75 milligram. Aspirin low dose has got a significant antiplatelet action, and it should be used in most patients with ACS. Unless the patient is having severe bleeding risk or some contraindication, this should be given immediately. Then you have to combine with it clopidogrel. Clopidogrel maintenance loading dose of 300 or 600 milligram, then the maintenance dose of 75 milligram. What does the clopidogrel do? It is a P2Y12 antagonist. It is an oral drug. It is a prodrug. It is converted to its active metabolite in the liver with the help of cytochrome P2C19 enzymes. These active metabolites can have a significant antiplatelet actions. But recently there is development of lot of platelet resistance due to mutation in cytochrome polymorphisms. The newer P2Y12 antagonists are preferred. What are the newer P2Y12 antagonists that are preferred? There is the ticagrelor, 180 milligram loading dose, then 90 milligram BD of the maintenance dose. This is preferred if the patient is treated medically. This patient can have more significant antiplatelet effect than clopidogrel at a cost of high risk of bleeding, but only adverse events of breathlessness. Other than that, this is an excellent drug and can be used along with aspirin. It can be given dual combination of aspirin by P2Y12 inhibitor is called as a dual antiplatelet therapy. This should be given invariably to all patients with NSTEMI at the time of first contact. If a patient is, if you are planning to do procedure after an angio, if you are planning to do an PCI, in that case, you can do a drug called as prasugrel. Prasugrel, this is the most potent antiplatelet. It is given as a loading dose of 60 milligram and a maintenance dose of 10 milligram. This is a very potent antiplatelet action, but has a higher risk of bleeding. It reduces the risk of MI, periprocedural MI, and is but at a cost of high risk of bleeding. It can be used in a case of a previous history of TIA or a previous history of stroke or a patient with let's say a low body weight. Those patients, you cannot go for this prasugrel. So start with aspirin, give it with all patients. Then you can go for clopidogrel if the patient is economically not that well, or if the patient is planned for PCA, you can go for a prasugrel, or if the patient is medically managed and the patient is affordable, you have started with aspirin. The second is the ticagrelor. The next important thing will be the anticoagulation. Anticoagulation will be done with the help of either unfractioned heparin. Unfractioned heparin on the 5000 units IV QID, that is what we mostly follow, or you can give it a dose of 100 units per kg bolus followed by 15 units per kg per hour infusion, or a low molecular heparin. This is given at a dose of 1 mg per kg subcutaneous BD. The patient is having good GFR. If it is a bad GFR less than 30, eGFR is creatinine clearance is very poor, then you can go for a 0.5 milligram per kg subcutaneous BD. This is low molecular heparin. This is the most commonly used drugs. These are the most extensively studied drugs, and most centers use these drugs. The other drugs include the fondaparinux. Fondaparinux is a synthetic drug. It is a direct NA inhibitor. It is used as a unit of 2.5 milligram subcutaneous OD. The fondaparinux, if you use fondaparinux, you should also combine it with some of the either unfractioned heparin for low molecular heparin for its long-term use, because it is not a very good anticoagulant. The other is a direct thrombin inhibitor in the form of a bivalirudin. Bivalirudin is a direct thrombin inhibitor. It is given at a loading dose of 0.75 mg per kg and then the maintenance dose of 1.75 mg per kg. They should be given the bivalirudin. So what is a triple antiplatelet therapy? Using an triple antiplatelet therapy means an aspirin is a COX inhibitor, plus a P2Y2 inhibitor in the form of a clopidogrel or prasugrel or ticagrelor with a GP2B3 antagonist. This group includes the abciximab, eptifibatide, or tirofiban. What is the role of the GP2B3 inhibitors? They can be used only in a patient who is undergoing PCI and they reduce the risk of periprocedural MI. They are not used in medically managed patients. They are only used in an interventionally managed patients. So this is the triple antiplatelet therapy. This is done given for a high risk patient who has got multiple risk factors, who has got an increased risk of MI. Then as patients you can try this triple antiplatelet therapy. So which are the patients with NSTEMI where you directly take the patient for intervention? Early intervention procedure is done in a patient with an early means within 2 hours. This is immediate. Refractory angina. The chest pain is not clearing with any of these drugs. Then you take the patient directly for PCI, and the patient with recurrent angina, multiple episodes in one day. Then you have to take the patient for MI. Then the patient with a sustained VT, ventricular tachycardia, or a ventricular fibrillation. Then you take the patient for immediately for this one. A patient with an severe MR, severe acute MR, or a patient with a CCF. Take the patient immediately for surgery. Or any patient with hypotension or hemodynamic instability. This should be taken immediately for surgery. So any patient with an NSTEMI wrestling with you don't give all the drugs, you do anticoagulation, but the patient is still having refractory pain or recurrent chest pain, or the patient is going for a recurrent VT or VF, or the patient is in failure, or the patient is under hypotension. All these are indications for directly immediately within 2 hours you go for PCI. Early PCI 2 to 24 hours should be done in the case, should be preferred in patients with Gray score. Gray score is a risk score. It predicts the 12-hour mortality rate, 12-hour mortality rate in a patient with this one, patient with ACS. Gray score more than 140, or a patient with a temporal rise in the markers, patients with new onset SCD changes. You have to take them for early PCI. So suppose the patient is having diabetes, CKD, CCF, then you have to take it within 1 to 3 days. A Gray score of 110 to 140 or a TIMI score of 2 to 3, you have to take it within 2 to 3 days. If the patient is having none of these features, then you have to go for medical management. So what are the long term? How do you manage long term? The patient should be advised lifestyle modification, quit smoking, do a good BP control, do a good sugar control. Patient should be based on dyslipidemia management with atorvastatin. Along with that, 5 drugs should be prescribed: an aspirin, clopidogrel, or some P2Y2 antagonist. Then you can go for atorvastatin. A patient should be started on AC inhibitor and a beta blocker. AC inhibitor, beta blocker, 2 antiplatelets, aspirin with a second antiplatelet, and statins. This should be given for at least 1 year. The dual antiplatelet therapy should be given for at least 1 year in a normal patient post NSTEMI. It can be continued for 3 years in a high risk patient. Those with multiple risk factors and those with large poor EF, this should be given for a long period of time. Then we will deal with another condition called as Prinzmetal angina. What is this Prinzmetal angina? It literally means a focal spasm of the epicardial artery. The epicardial coronary artery will go for a focal spasm because of increased sensitivity to a circulating noradrenaline or a serotonin, leading to a transmural infarction of the underlying LV, resulting in ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation or an acute MI or a sudden cardiac death. This is what is the Prinzmetal angina. Focal spasm of the epicardial coronary artery resulting in underlying LV dysfunction causing MI. This is what is called as Prinzmetal angina. This is predominantly seen in a young Japanese patient who doesn't have multiple risk factors, whose cardiovascular examination, the routine examination should be normal. Just that when you do a coronary angiography, you can demonstrate the focal stenosis. This focal stenosis can be precipitated by an intracoronary installation of either you can go for acetylcholine or you can hyperventilate the patient and you can find these findings. The unique feature is comes in management. Treatment, don't go for beta blockers because they can worsen the coronary vasoconstriction. Don't go for aspirin. Again, it is postulated to produce increased risk of principal angina. Use CCB, use nitrates, use statins. If there is increased risk of sudden cardiac death or refractory, go for ICD, can go for revascularization if there is significant epicardial obstruction. So this is the management part of principal angina. So summary, any patient with high risk patient, diabetes, hypertension, smoking, alcohol, CKD, CCF, any patient presenting with acute onset chest pain with profuse sweating, do an ECG. If the ECG shows ST depression or T wave inversion, which is new onset, and so that has significant changes, do a troponin or CKMB. If the troponin or CKMB becomes positive, or if the CKMB is elevated, start the patient on unfractionated heparin with an aspirin with a clopidogrel and atorvastatin. Then trace the patient whether it has early invasive strategy or ischemic guidance strategy. If there is early invasive strategy, directly send the patient for the cath lab and do the PSA and identify the vascular occlusion. Then depending on the vascular occlusion, go for either a CABG or a coronary artery stenting. If the patient is having low risk features, continue on dual antiplatelet therapy for at least 1 year along with ACE inhibitors and beta blockers and atorvastatin. Do lifestyle modification. You have to anticoagulate the patient for a period of 5 to 10 days depending on the underlying profile. This sums up our discussion on InSTEMI. I hope this was useful. If it was going to be useful, I would like you to subscribe to my channel and I would like to hit the bell icon so that you will get notification on the next videos. Thank you.